how did your parents come here, or were they here for a while? And what was that like growing up
Yeah,
in?
yeah. So I actually was born in Taiwan. I was born in Tainan, Taiwan, and my parents, had an arranged marriage, and I think, so I hear this, obviously secondhand. I heard it secondhand from my mom, but one day my dad decided that he wanted to immigrate to the United States. He actually, I guess, got a scholarship to study Russian. And so I guess this was back in, if you kind of think at the timeline, this was back in the early 60s during the Cold War. And I think the federal government was trying to find, Chinese people who could speak or interpret in Russian. Right after I was born, my family immigrated to Cleveland, Ohio, because my dad went to school at Case, Western Reserve. And I don't remember much of those first few years. But I see pictures. It was very cold in the wintertime in Cleveland, Ohio. And then I think, and that's where my younger sister was born. And then I think when I was about 5, we immigrated to downtown Los Angeles, and kind of that's, I've been here ever since.
Was your father involved in medicine? Was he a professor in linguistics, or what was his background?
Yeah, no, he wasn't involved. No one in my family was involved in medicine. Basically, yes. So he was, he taught, languages, and I think for a time he was a translator for, for the CIA or NSA or something like that. I don't know really, but I just, I know we moved to. Los Angeles near USC actually, and I went to 32nd Street Elementary School, which I think is still there. I actually drove by it recently. It's very different than it was 50 years ago, but and then eventually when I was in junior high, my family moved to Cerritos. And that's where I went to high school. I went to Whitney High School in Cerritos, and then went to Brown for undergrad and Stanford for medical school, and then UCLA for my PhD. And I've been here at UCLA ever since.
What's interesting is that from California, you went to Brown and you double degreed. You had a BS in biochem and then BA in poli-sci. Is that right? How did that happen for you? Was it because your father was interested in political science and languages, and then you were interested in science? Was your mother a scientist? Was she involved in research?
Yeah, no, my mom was not a scientist at all. My mom only had a high school education, but I must say she's the smartest person I have ever met. She's one of those people. She was incredibly good at math and science. I mean, she was, still able to help us, my sister and I with high school math all the way till till we graduated from high school. So I think and she had always been a huge inspiration for me, because I think she's one of those people that if she had the opportunity to go to college or grad school, she would have done incredibly well. But that just wasn't what I guess at the time, what the opportunities had afforded her. So that's, kind of, I guess, why I really liked math and science when I was in school. So that's kind of why, I majored in biochemistry. The political science part was, was a little bit, I guess, just, listening to stories about, the Cold War and, kind of what was happening, at the time. I just thought it was, interesting to learn more about, kind of international politics and the kind of what was going on in the world. And I remember for my thesis, we had to do like an undergraduate thesis, and I took a class on the Sino-Soviet conflict. And I remember in my thesis, I wrote that, predicted that the Soviet Union would fall in the near future. And this was in the 80s. And I remember I got a C in that paper because my professor was like, oh, that will never happen. The
Oh my
Soviet
goodness.
Union is a huge world power. And then now it's like in retrospect, it's like, well, maybe, it's so anyway, so I did better in science than I did in political science. And actually that's why I went to med school.
That's really exciting that you have such a wonderful path led by curiosity and led by fascination. You're genuinely interested in learning about the world we live. I think that's amazing. And the fact that your mom shepherded you along the way, it's just such a beautiful story. I read it in your biography that you were inspired by your mother because she had cancer and it metastasized in her brain. Did that happen when you were in grad school? How did that inspire you? First of all, how did you react to that news? Was it a phone call? And I'm sure it was just harrowing for your whole family. And then how did that life experience inspire you to the next step?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those kind of things that, still, I guess still it impacts me today. I remember that she was initially diagnosed with breast cancer when I was in medical school, and she had a mastectomy, and I didn't really think that much of it because she did fine for a while, and then when it came back, and she got very sick. That was when I was when it was towards the end of medical school, and that's actually why I decided to come back home to LA for residency. So actually, came back to UCLA for residency, and unfortunately, she passed away when I was a fourth year resident. And I think, what really frustrated me at the time was that I felt like, with all the current medical knowledge that was available, there was nothing that I could do to help her. And I think that's, and now, 25 years later, I've seen thousands of patients now with metastatic cancer and primary brain cancer, and I guess it's so gratifying to be able to help even just a little bit. But then at the same time, it's frustrating when we can't. And I guess that's kind of the reason I do what I do, because I love the clinical aspects of taking care of brain cancer patients. But I also love the research aspects of being able to work on, hopefully new treatments and new cures for the disease.
So we have a lot of people tuning in who are not familiar with medical research and healthcare. And neuroscience is the study of and the clinical research surrounding neuroscience, but then neurosurgery is it's related, but entirely different practice. Is that right? So then you love the clinical side of it, so you can be innovative and continue to develop the field, but you'd like to also apply it practically through surgery. Did I say that correctly?
Yes.
Oh, really?
That's exactly what I do and what I love about my job. I get to do both, and I think that's what keeps me.
I think you are the only reason why I would support human cloning. We need to clone you, Dr. Liau. We need to have like multiple Dr. Liaus because I have never met someone who's so humble and so tied to legacy and heritage and family, and at the same time very fascinated by innovation. And I know that our audience would love to hear more about your ideas of how you came up with the vaccine for brain cancer.
So one thing that was always, frustrating to me when I was, starting out in neurosurgery is that, for instance, with malignant brain tumors, we could do a great surgery, take out the tumor, but then 6 months later, the tumor is back, despite the radiation and chemotherapy. And that was just, incredibly frustrating. And part of the problem is that these cells are cells that we can't see, and that's the problem with a lot of cancers, is that the reason cancers come back is because you can't see them, so you can't take them out surgically. You can't really target them with any, drugs or radiation very well. And then in the brain, you certainly don't want to damage the surrounding brain tissue in attempts to try to take out more or radiate the tissue. So we don't get big margins like you do for other types of surgeries. So I guess, one thought about, what could you do to get to, cells that you can't see, and if you really think about it, the only thing that can do that is your immune system, because the immune system is able to get to viruses and bacteria that we could never see. I mean, there's no way you could surgically, take out the COVID virus in someone's body. I mean, you can't see these things.
Right, you can't see it.
So I think it's the same concept with tumor cells. The tumor cells are different. They're foreign to the patient. So there should be some way to train your body to recognize them, as a foreign invader and try to really, prevent these tumors from coming back. So that was the initial concept at the time. And then I think a lot, a lot of the research that, my group and I were doing was just predicated on a lot of other things that were going on at the time, in terms of other types of, immunotherapies and vaccines for other types of cancers and how people were kind of developing, immune responses for other cancers. I think one thing that's different about the brain is that for the longest time, the brain was thought to be immune privileged. If you remember in neuroscience, they used to teach you that there's a blood-brain barrier and that the immune system doesn't get into the brain. And I would say, I remember when I was applying for my first grants for research, that would be the comment I would always get. It's like, oh, this project won't work because we all know that the brain is immune privileged. How can you, induce an immune response into the brain? So I think that was, something that was thought to not be, I guess, plausible at the time. But now, in retrospect, now people, do work on immunotherapy for brain tumors and as well as other cancers. But I think at the time it was viewed as an area that wasn't feasible because these immune cells didn't get into the brain. But
Dr. Liau, do you feel that eventually we will have a vaccine against most cancers, like breast cancer or other cancers? Do you think that's in a foreseeable future?
I think so. I think so. As we learn more about these cancers and these diseases, and as we get better at making vaccines, because there's right now it's still a lot of the immunotherapies for cancer are still quite difficult to manufacture, especially the cellular therapies. But I think as we learn more about what the antigens are for these cancers, hopefully that'll be the case. I mean, there are already vaccines for, for instance, for cervical cancer,
Yes, right.
For, teenage girls get that now. So it's just a matter of figuring out what the, I guess what the antigens are, or what potentially would cause these cancers, and then vaccinating people against that. And then I must say now with the new research that's been done, with regard to COVID vaccines and the mRNA types of vaccines, the ability to design, new vaccines, I think is quite exciting. I mean, you can imagine making an mRNA vaccine to 50 different antigens that could potentially be causing different cancers and trying to prevent those from actually forming tumors.
Another thing that people always have trouble with is that the cancer a lot of times is misdiagnosed with something else. So by the time it's actually discovered that the pain you're experiencing is cancer, sometimes it's a little bit late. You're already in stage 3 or 4. So with brain cancer, what are some of the symptoms that people feel that sometimes they can confuse with another condition?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, many of the symptoms that arise due to brain cancer are kind of similar to what you were saying happened to your mom, actually.
I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking I should bring her from Taiwan to see you.
Well, I think at least she should get an MRI scan just
Yes.
to be sure that there's nothing there, because a lot of times because the symptoms are very similar to Alzheimer's or other types of dementia or stroke, because all it is really a mass that's invaded a certain part of the brain. And if that part of the brain controls, for instance, language areas, then people would have problems, talking or comprehending language. If it controls motor areas, then people would have problems walking or moving. And oftentimes with tumors in the brain, you get cognitive changes and memory loss or seizures. So actually a lot of the patients that I see, they were initially diagnosed with something different, and then finally they got a MRI scan of the brain and discovered to have a brain tumor, and then that's how we find out about them.
What would you say to women and girls in science who are wanting to go into the field, and they're maybe getting a little frustrated, not just by society and the systemic establishment of the way hospitals rank people, but maybe even from their family telling them, oh, it's a lot of work and you just not do it? Or what are some words of encouragement that you would like to say to women and girls going into the field?
Yeah, something I'd like to say is something that my mom told me is just, don't let anyone tell you no. And it's, and I guess, I've always, kind of believed that. And I mean, I've worked hard. It's not that, I didn't have a lot of sleepless nights to get to where I am in terms of, my career. But with that being said, I think I picked a career that I really love. I mean, quite frankly, I'm actually so grateful for the opportunity to be able to be part of the lives of all the patients that I've kind of gotten to know over the years. And it sounds weird, but I kind of wake up and often wonder, like, they actually pay me to do this, because it's actually something that I just love doing, and I think that's what's important. I mean, I guess in terms of encouraging young Asian women to go into fields that are not traditionally filled by women or minorities is to really find something that you love and are passionate about, and then just do it. So I actually really never thought of it much, other than that I just loved to do it, and I kept trying, and just didn't let people tell me no. And also I think one thing that I kind of learned about myself is I'm an extreme introvert, which is actually
you're very, very humble, and I can tell that you love to solve problems and you enjoy that.
And which is unusual, because the usual, if you go to business school, they say, you need to be extroverted and very kind of like out there. I'm not actually. I prefer, rather than, going out, I actually prefer just staying at home and, watching TV. But I think, what I've learned is that, it's important to just, be yourself, as opposed to trying to, I guess, model leadership skills or leadership approaches, after other people. So I guess, for anybody out there who wants to be a neurosurgeon, I really recommend it. And it is hard work, but if it's something that you love or you want to do, I think there should be ways that you could do that. And as I mentioned, I had wanted to be a singer, but I'm a horrible and tone deaf. So there are some things that I think if you don't have the skill set, it may not work out.
How did you feel when you got the phone call and the email that you were inducted, you were nominated and voted into the Asian Hall of Fame, which has inducted Bruce Lee and Christy Yamaguchi and Connie Chung, and you are the first ever neuroscientist, neurosurgeon to be inducted? How did that make you feel? And what does it mean to you personally to be inducted into the Asian Hall of Fame?
Yeah, well, I am so honored. I mean, I was, when I heard about it, I was like, I must say I was humbled. I mean, these other people were such, icons, for me growing up. I mean, I must say I was, I really, looked up to people like Connie Chung. I remember watching her on the Channel 2 news when I was growing up, and I think, and you're right. I mean, these these people are movie stars and athletes, and they just politicians and just phenomenal people, and to be included among that group, I'm just, I don't know what to say. I mean, I'm humbled. And I'm also excited that you did include, a scientist, because I do, I guess, I want to give a plug for science as being a, kind of a sexy career, hopefully, as a lot of the others, and I think that is an area that Asians do excel in. I think we can really make huge impacts, in this field, as with all the other fields that the honorees have been in. I think I just want to say thank you, and it's really such an honor.
Well, welcome to the Asian Hall of Fame, and congratulations in being the 2021 inductee, Dr. Liau. You're a fabulous, inspirational, wonderful human being, and we are thrilled and honored by you.